All right, everybody. I've got two very special guests for you all this week. Everybody, please welcome to the show Chuck Satterlee and Jason Michalski. Welcome, boys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, we've gathered here today to talk about a comic book you guys are putting together, an anthology comic. So, something that's always close to my heart. I love anthology comics personally. And then you're also combining it with another thing that I really love, which is cooking. So, whichever one of you wants to jump in, let's start with the book is Pots and Panels, a comic book anthology. What is the book about, and what kind of brought this whole project about for you guys?
Jason, you want to do that?
No, you know what, Chuck? Why don't you? You kickstarted this project, so I think you should do the introduction because I think this is something that you were percolating in your head for a long time.
So, thanks, Jason. So, Chris, COVID hit, and we were all stuck in our homes. And, I'm from Chicago, and I loved a good pizza. I loved a good Italian beef, good hot dog. Jason's from New York, so he likes a inferior hot dog and inferior pizza. But nonetheless, I always like good food. I'm not thin. There's a reason. But when COVID hit and we were all stuck in our homes forever, my wife and I've been married 30 years, my wife and I started to experiment. We're not cooks. We're not chefs. I don't know what happens when you put this with this because I don't have that education. But we became recipe followers, and we just started making recipes. And all of a sudden, we were making cashew chicken that was as good as a restaurant. We were making pizzas that were ridiculous. We were making lobster, mac and cheese. We made recipes that we never would have thought we could make, and we just tried it, and we became foodies. And then we became addicted to Guys Grocery Games, Beat Bobby Flay. I mean, we had nothing else to do for 2 years, and we just started watching those things. And so we became, honest to God, high-level foodies, just awesome, just involved in cooking and learning and everything else. And I'm a comic guy, I'm a food guy, and I won't lie. The idea, the name Pots and Panels came into mind, and it was an idea for a podcast. We were thinking, well, let's get some comic book guys together and who love food, and let's talk about, hey, what's the greatest fish fast food sandwich, and let's discuss it. That was the idea behind Pots and Panels. And then I was just talking with some friends.
Let me steal that idea.
There you go. And we started talking, and then some friends and I got together and we're like, what about an anthology? What about if we put together, what if we did food related stories, and then every single creator that was in the book, or at least most of them, contributed a recipe, but even more than that, a short 1 to 2 paragraph story about why that recipe is special to them. Because food sparks memories, food sparks emotion, food is central to our lives. So we got comic books, we got recipes, we got food themed stories, and we have, can I curse on your podcast?
I'll feel fucking free to do whatever you want.
We have a fucking ridiculous list of creators, right, Jason?
Yeah. It's really the amount of every day. Like we kind of just talk. We talk the three of us between Chuck, myself, and Austin, who's another coordinator on this project. We talk almost every day, and we're always giggling about the amount of talent that's on this book because it's like we can't believe we got all these people together in one place to make these stories. And some of them are comic book heroes, which really it blows our minds that we get to work with these people that we grew up reading and admiring. So it's just been a blast. And for me, obviously I love comics. I love reading them and making them. But my younger son is also going to culinary school to become a chef. And when I told him about this, it like blew his mind. And so now he contributed a recipe to the back. In hindsight, I should have asked him to. In hindsight, I should have asked him to help me write one of the stories, but I didn't really think about that, but I should have. And he's also a fan of comics and a lot of the creators in the book. So it really, I love talking to him about it, and he just went nuts when he heard about it. So it's just been a great experience this all the way through.
It's something that I talk about a lot, like getting into. Personally, for me, I don't know how you guys are with this, but like comics are comics to me. So like we have that differentiation of like comics and manga. Manga is just comics to me. It's just a different culture making comics.
Yeah.
But we do have that conversation of why manga is outselling comics and why they're doing so much better and blah blah. It's been a conversation for I feel like forever now. But one of the things I've isolated was the fact that manga does these things like not just depending on one genre, where comics really depends on superheroes as it's like base for everything. And as comics fans, we know there's a lot more out there, but like one of my favorite books, and it just became an anime this year. Hopefully everybody's watched it by now, but it was Delicious in Dungeon, which was a similar idea, but it was this story of this troop going into the dungeon like you would in D&D and trying to survive and making different recipes off of what's in the dungeon. And you could really translate the recipes they give you into actual recipes. And it was a cool idea to mash the two things together. And it was one of those things, as I'm reading it, I'm like, why haven't we done more of this in the like North American comic space? Why aren't we doing more of this? And then, as with everything, you go out there and you start to find more. Not that there's a ton of them, but your guys' project popped up one day, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's almost exactly what I was thinking. Like, but that's an American way to do it, at least in our comic space. Had you guys heard of any of these kinds of things before, or was this just kind of a brainstorm? Like, oh shit, this would be really cool.
Well, for me, I'll admit I haven't read a lot of comic book anthologies in my life, so I wasn't aware of something like this. When Chuck told me about it, I was like, "Wow, I've never heard of that before." And an idea like that of coming together and merging the two. But my kids also read a lot of manga, and so now that you're saying it, it all makes sense. And like the idea of doing even like a comic book about baseball, I would love to do that. And I know like a lot of manga, there's things like about golf or sports in general, and just kind of like slice of life stuff that I would love to get involved in. And I can understand the appeal. Once you start doing something like that, it starts to click. And I think doing these stories and working on this book definitely made all that stuff click for me. So, but as far as this anthology goes, yeah, this is all new territory for me.
Yeah, you know what one of the greatest names in all of comics is, in my opinion, Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor's Paper Films. It's called Paper Films, and I have a point to this. Paper Films is exactly, in Understanding Comics, Scott McCloud talked about how comics are, sequential art, pictures told in sequential order to tell a story, right? Which is exactly the same as movies. So when, Jason's talking about baseball or, comic books can be used to tell any story ever, period.
Yes.
Can movies tell a love story? Yes. Can movies can cinema tell a Avengers Endgame? Yeah, but can movies also tell Manhattan Murder Mystery? I'm bringing up Woody Allen. I hope I don't get canceled, but I'm kidding. But my point is that any story can be told in a movie. Any story can be told in a comic, and so anthologies are fantastic because it's like in Pots and Panels, for instance, Jason talks about a baseball story. We have food-themed stories, but sci-fi, western, adventure, detective noir, apocalyptic. What else, Jason?
There's slice of life. There's horror.
Slice of life. Murder.
Just comedies.
Prison.
There's just straight up comedies. Like
Yeah.
It spans a lot of different genres.
Yeah. So an anthology has the opportunity to bring so much storytelling together into one book. You know, it's quite frankly for me, it's mesmerizing. Yeah, I was just saying how great the medium is, because we can tell any story we want, and we pretty much do in Pots and Panels. Literally every genre is in Pots and Panels.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, one of the things I love about anthologies, and I always, this goes for any anthology, but we talk about a lot on the show, on the main show, about like DC and Marvel does anthologies, and they usually put the one bit, like Mark Waid's at the top, and then they have all these other names below them that are lesser known creators just trying to get their break. And I like that this one you guys did something similar. So we've got, you talked about all the great talent you have here. We can kind of go through some of that, because I'd love to hear some of the stories about getting them on. But you've got, you know, Phil Hester, Steve Niles, a guy that was one of the first guys I was reading when I started reading comics, Tim Seeley, and then we go, both of you are in it in some manner, and then we go down the list, and you've got guys that people that listen to the show should be familiar with Charlie McKelvey and Sean Wolfe, and of course Richard Fairgray. One of my favorites, Benjamin Morse. And then you threw a bone to a guy named Travis Gibb. I don't know what that's all about. But let's talk.
Yeah, I don't know.
But talk about. Well, yeah, I'd love to hear the stories of getting some of the guys that are more seasoned veterans in this industry. But talk about like grabbing all this talent and trying to get them together, trying to wrangle them together. I'm sure it's like herding cats. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
I would love to agree with you that it's like herding cats, and if it's creators who have less esteem than me, sure, it's like herding cats. But if it's creators that have more esteem than me, it's like, no, it's we're honored to have them. You know, Jason, do you want to handle that, or do you want me to?
Or from what the getting them on board, or just
getting them on board and who they are, you know.
So, from my perspective, and Chuck was the one who was really reaching out to most of these folks, it was fairly easy. You know, we proposed the idea, and they were totally on board. There were some creators that weren't able to make it due to scheduling conflicts that we were really looking forward to, but we'll get a chance to work with them on the next anthology. But it seemed like everybody was interested that we approached. And the ones that you do see are the ones that were able to fit it into their schedule. And then hopefully the ones that we couldn't get, like I said, we'll get to work with them next time. But I don't really remember any difficulties trying to get somebody to come on.
No, you're right about that.
To do this. It's been a seamless experience. And the idea of them just being so generous with their time and their talent is also was an amazing experience.
Yeah, when we started this anthology, when we started Pots and Panels, the idea was to get some of the best creators in indie comics. And I know we throw a lot of shade at Travis, but right now, but he is.
By the way, Travis is a good friend, so he's rag on him.
He's the best, man. Travis's Cthulhu anthologies are, you know, a how-to guide on how to do an anthology. I mean, he's a freaking god, you know, when it comes to anthologies and doing this stuff. I love him. But the idea in the beginning was to get some of the best creators in indie comics together. And then one day, I don't know if it was Jason and I or whatever, but we were kind of just thinking, I've been around a minute, you know. I've been around a long time, and you know, I've never really hit really hard or anything, but I've been blessed to, you know, I've been lucky to work with some great creators over the years. I've worked with George Perez and Norm Brayfogle and Phil Hester and a bunch more people. And through all of that and my time in Chicago, I've been able to meet a lot of people and foster relationships and keep those relationships. So we started thinking, why are we just limiting it? This is a cool idea. Let's ask some people. And like Jason said, we started asking some people, and all of a sudden, boom, we got this guy, we got that, we got Hester, Ron Mars, you know, God, yeah, come on, Andy Kuhn, Hester, Tim Seeley. Tim Seeley's on fire. Eisner nominations. They're Sci-Fi's making a TV show right now of one of his stories. We've got Neil Clyde. We got all these great guys, and you don't even want to know who said yes to us. But like Jason said, it just couldn't fit into their schedule. He'll probably kill me, but should I Pagliatti, he almost jumped in. He just couldn't come up with a story in time. Isabella, all these guys. And when we do Anthology next time, it's going to be crazy. But all of a sudden, and then we started getting a big head. And I don't know Steve Niles. I did not know Steve Niles, but like you, Chris, I am a Steve Niles fanatic. I love him, and so I was like, "Hi, Mr. Niles, would you be interested in this thing?" And he's like, "Remember Jason?" He's like, "Fuck yeah." And he wrote a script in 3 days, and his script is ridiculous. It's so fucking just off. It's fantastic.
So, a quick side story. I don't think I've ever told this story before. I was 17, and I had just discovered 30 Days a Night. I fucking love that book.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
This makes me feel stupid. It's the greatest idea of vampires ever.
Yeah, and I've been my father's a big vampire nut. I grew up loving vampires and zombies and stuff. But I was reading this book, and I had all volumes in the back of my car. I just graduated high school, and I was working overnight shifts, and I got in this really bad car accident.
Ooh.
Luckily, nobody was hurt. Everybody was fine. Whatever. But my car was destroyed. And we get back of the car, all my volumes of 30 Days a Night are in the back of the car because I was reading them on my lunch breaks at work. And I remember I was so mad because my 30 Days of Nights graphic novels were destroyed.
Not your car.
I was 17. I didn't give a fuck about the car.
Right on, man. Right on.
Sounds right.
Now,
Nothing
if it happened
love.
today, no offense, Steve, but I could rebuy those 30 Days of Nights graphic novels.
Yeah, but you had your priorities properly set when you were 17.
Yeah, young, dumb, full of cum. It was those were good times.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't know how it could have, I don't know how it could be better, man. These stories, all food themed. We have over 60 recipes in the book. We have some great designers. We have some ridiculous colorists and letterers. Case in point, colorists. The father of modern comic book coloring. The founder of Digital Chameleon. The only person that P. Craig Russell lets touch his work for coloring. Laverne Kinzerski is one of our house colorists panels. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean?
And I like that it kind of worked out that way for you because, like I said, with anthologies, stacking them with creators people know, and this isn't any comment on quality of people's work, just stacking it with people know, that gets them in the door, and then they can come back through and say, oh, Sean Wolf had this story in there, and it was great.
You mean Brian Wolf?
Or Brian Wolf, yeah.
Oh my God!
And and Travis Gibb had the story. It was really great. I'll check out their work too. That's the beauty of an anthology to me.
Yeah, we're hoping that more people check out Charlie McAvee. And you mentioned him. How good is Richard Fairgray?
Richard Fairgray is a gem.
He is,
and we need to cherish this gem.
We need to. Everyone who comes into physical closeness with Richard Fairgray should hug Richard Fairgray and say thank you.
I'm sure Richard did plenty of stuff before us, but I remember it was a free comic book day one year, and there was a free comic book day. Every free comic book day back in the day, this is pre-COVID, I would be the guy who would find the weirdest thing at free comic book day. And that particular year, I found this book called Blastosaurus. And I'm flipping through it, and I'm just like, this is so fucking strange, and I love it. And I looked at the back, and it was created by Richard Fairgray. And I'm like, I need to email this man and get him on my show to talk about this book. And then what came out of his mouth after that just became gold. He is so full of stories and amazing just life.
Right. He is. I don't know. I don't know who to say. He's today's Harvey Pekar. I mean, he's just so he's so great. And we have you mentioned him. I first learned of Ben Morse from August Purgatory from August in Red 5, and I fell in love with Ben Morse. We've got talking about independent guys. Another independent guy that just couldn't fit it into his schedule. That who's going to be an anthology, Steve Bryant. But we've got we talked about McAvee. We've talked about Travis. We've talked about Fairgray. But then we have also complete unknowns. I don't know. I had no idea who John Chance was. Did you, Jason?
No, this was the first time discovering John Chance. This was the first time for me for a lot of the creators in the book.
There's
Howie Knoll.
Howie Knoll,
is amazing. John Chance, like you said. Brian Wolf. I mean, I know we're working with Brian on another project now, but I didn't know Brian until just recently.
Eric Palicki. I mean, I knew who Eric Palicki was, but Eric Palicki's in this book. He is a crazy talent. His sister is. I know who Eric Palicki is. His sister's a really good actress who was in G.I. Joe and
Adrian
Palicki. My favorite Star Trek show, the Orville. But Eric Palicki is a crazy writer. I mean, and then Vince Underwood, the artist of Eric Palicki's story. We could do this for 8 hours and we'll bore the hell out of people.
Yeah.
But oh my god, this story is, or this book is got it's 87 creators, Chris.
Yeah, and I'd love to jump into to keep it in the same realm. We've talked about a lot of the creators that people would know, the writers, the artists, so on and so forth. How many? You talked a little bit about one of the colorists. Does each story have its own colorist, and B, does that go the same for the letterer, or did you just hire Jerome and say he can do it all?
Jerome.
Yes.
So we did exactly that. We hired Jerome, but we also hired Chuck Molly, and we also hired Hector Negrete, because there's 50 freaking stories here. So we have house colorists and house letterers, but every team was free to come in with their own color, their own letters, whatever, and a lot of them did. But we have Laverne Kinserski, Wolf. He's a house colorist. Timothy C. Brown, Matt James, all house colorists, and we assign different stories to them. Emily Rice, and then the letterers. Jason.
I mean, lettering. Like Chuck said, we have Jerome, we have Chuck Malley, who I'm a big fan of.
People don't know who Chuck Malley is. What did he do?
So, Chuck Malley is the longest running ElfQuest letterer of all time. So, if you're familiar with ElfQuest from back in the day, I mean, ElfQuest is still being published, but Chuck has the longest stint of the letterer on ElfQuest of all time, and he's just an amazing person, and he's so good to work with. That I got to work with him again. I worked on 2 stories in this anthology, and he's lettered both of them for me, which I was really happy about. And Hector Negrete, Hector just finished a gig. Can I talk about Hector's?
Hell yeah, man!
Well, I guess it's too late now. So Hector's lettering a story in the Joker World book from DC Comics that's coming out. I think
that already came out, so I think you're safe.
He's the letterer from the story coming out of Mexico. I would imagine the creative team is coming out of Mexico, and he's the letterer on that book. And really, without these house colorists, and house letterers and designers, this book couldn't happen.
Yeah, Jerome Gagnon is designing all of the recipe pages, Chris,
Yeah.
and the graphic design for those. And then Hector Negrete is doing the graphic design for everything else. And
Yeah.
and they're working in conjunction because there's 440 pages in this anthology. We had to get two designers together
Yeah.
to work in conjunction.
Yeah, and they're really like the glue that's keeping this together
Mm-hmm.
because we couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
But was Jerome hired because you were like, "Hey, we're going to Kickstarter, and it's against the law to not have Jerome on a Kickstarter page"?
Kind of, because Travis Gibb was like, "Hey, Jerome should do something on the book," and we were like, "Okay, Anthology Lord," you know. So if Travis Gibb tells us to do something, we do it, you know, because Travis knows what the hell he's doing, you know.
So let's shift gears a little bit of what people can expect in the book. So you've talked a little bit about it. Like each story has its own flair. We've got so many different kinds of genres going through it. The actual layout of the book is, let's just say it's one of your stories. Is it going to be here's the story, then here's the recipe for it, and then here, like how are you laying it out to make it make sense throughout the book?
Sure. So the way we've decided to lay it out is that all of the stories are going to be together in the front of the book, and then the recipes will be in the back. So the recipes section will kind of be its own cookbook. So like it'll have its own cover page, so that when you are finished with the stories, it leads right into the recipe pages. So we liked the idea of having the separate section that acts like a cookbook, and then all the stories together, because we really wanted, so we didn't want to distract the reading experience from the reading experience. So like we wanted, of course, you know, when you start reading the first story, you want it to be a seamless experience going through to the end, and then you can spend all this time on the recipes. So we tried to do it that way, and then also we have a really cool story at the end of the book that closes it out from Mark Rez and Jeremiah Scheich that leads into Mark Rez's afterword. So it's kind of set up in a way where
And
Mark
for those of a
and
certain
Jeremiah
age,
close it out.
who is Mark Resnick?
Oh, so Mark Rez is the drummer of the rock band The Toadies. And he is not only the incredible drummer of The Toadies, but he's a massive comic book fan. And he's one of the people that we approached to be in the anthology, and he said yes, and that blew our minds. And so, because Mark is an incredible person, and he's really an awesome guy, and he's a massive comic book fan. So it makes so much sense. And so he has this great story that he's closing the book out with Jeremiah.
It's called Sauerkraut and Dumplings.
Yeah, and then it leads right into his forward. Into his afterword, and then that sets up the recipe. So it's a nice segue from the comics into the recipe book.
And the nice thing about Mark's story, Sauerkraut and Dumplings, it's inspired by handwritten recipe cards from his mother. And so we go Sauerkraut and Dumplings, drawn by the incredible Jeremiah Scheich. And then it goes into Rez's, and then it goes directly into Rez's recipe for Sauerkraut and Dumplings, which, by the way, Jerome is designing, and it includes the scans of Mark's mother's handwritten recipe cards. So the center
really
of
nice
center of Pots and Panels is kind of like a salute to Mark Rez and the Toadies and his books. But Jason and I absolutely fucking love Mark. And then the foreword, by the way, is written by another guy.
I forgot. Yeah,
who you may have heard of.
So the foreword is being written by Michael Oeming of Powers and Thor and a million other amazing things he's written and drawn. And he's
Currently working on Galaxy of Madness. Everybody out there, go pick
That's
that book
right.
up.
Thank you very much.
Yep, Galaxy of Madness.
Of course.
Just, we'd be here all day listing Mike's work. But yeah, so he's been gracious enough to provide the foreword to the book, which is amazing. And it just keeps getting better and better. Like the more, like, this is what I mean when we sit around and talk about this and we start putting the files together and we start doing all the the behind the scenes stuff, we're giggling because we can't believe it.
Well,
It's
tell Chris about how you were talking about like Jason the other day. He's in his 40s, and he's like, I was emailing with Ron Mars yesterday.
so like because one of my responsibilities on the project is to mail out the book plate stickers for everybody to autograph. So I packaged all the stickers out and I mailed them to all of the creators that are participating. So I'm standing there and I'm like, I'm mailing something to Ron Mars, I'm mailing something to Tim Seeley, I'm mailing something to Phil Hester, and then they're gonna mail it back to me. Like I totally, it's the silliest thing, but I completely fucking geek out over it. I'm like, I can't believe this. Like I'm mailing this out to, all these different people, and it's just really blows my mind because I have all their comics on my shelf, and then it's really like a dream come true. It's really been an amazing experience.
Yeah, this is a project created by fanboy geeks, showcasing fanboy geeks with some comic royalty thrown in.
Yeah. And there's another thing I wanted to add was, as the creators are creating the stories, they're sending us the scripts. They send in the pencils, they send in the inks, right? So we get to see the process of how these comics are made. So we get to see what, Ron Mars' script looks like. We get to see what Phil Hester's pencils look like. We get to see what Stephen Grant's scripts
Oh
look
my
like.
God, Stephen Grant, right?
And
yeah.
it's like going to school, seeing all this. Like I was reading Ron's script, I was reading Stephen's script, I was reading Steve Niles' script, and I'm just like going to school as a writer, getting to read these and then seeing how the artwork is translated, and how that gets done, and it's just been a learning experience as well.
I used to tell young people when they would say, "How should I get into comics?" Write what you know and blah blah blah. No, the new way to get into comics and to learn and to get really better really fast is just to put together an anthology with a whole bunch of fucking amazing creators and then read all their scripts as they
get as many
I always
eyes
say,
in one room.
I've never heard the same story twice of how somebody got in the comics, so
yeah, man.
it would shock me.
Yeah, this has been the honor. I don't know if I can't speak for Jason, but I think he'll agree. This has been one of the honors of my life to put this together.
So, if I can, one of the things that as I'm thinking about how you're having the book set up, if you're putting all the recipes in the back, how are you connecting the recipes to the stories? And what actually is kind of an aside to that, were you telling the creators, hey, we want you to tell a story about food and blah blah blah, but does that story necessarily have to connect directly to the recipe?
That's a
Like,
great
does Steve
question.
Niles, if Steve Niles' story is about lasagna, does he have to tell a story about haunted lasagna for it to be the recipe in it?
That's a great question. Jason, do you want to do it or do you want me to?
You can handle this one.
They don't have to connect at all. It was this. Hey, tell us a food-themed story. What comes to your head? What comes to mind? That's done. Now, let's get into you as a human being. What do you like? So not only are they recipes, Chris, but the cool thing about the recipe section, and they don't have to be connected to the story at all, although some of them are, but the cool thing about the recipes is every single recipe has a 1 to 2 paragraph story written by the creator who submitted the recipe about why they love it. And some of those stories are heartbreaking. Because food sparks emotions, food sparks memories, food sparks smells and love and hate and everything else. And so you're going to get stories about that get into the mind of Steve Niles and Phil Hester. Phil Hester is it his aunt's recipe? Something like that. We got one guy, James Garner, who's a Chicago writer, and he's 60 something years old, and when he was through Texas when he was younger, he found a postcard Remember postcards? Yeah. And he found a postcard that had a Texas chili recipe on it. He still has that postcard today, and he has changed the recipe. He's worked on the recipe, but that postcard has lived with him through his whole life. He got married. He fell in love. He got married. He had kids. He had a family. He's a retiree now. That postcard has been with him through his whole life. Everything he's ever written, he's owned that postcard. And that postcard is scanned front and back on his recipe page, and his story is called Texas Chili Postcard. You know, that is this book. It is so the recipes, they don't have to be connected to the story, Chris, but the recipes are connected to the creators, and the creators are telling the readers why. So not only do you get a recipe, but you get to jump in the mind of the creator who gave it, and you get to live a little bit of his life. You know, Rez's handwritten mother's recipe. I have a story in it. You know, I've been married 30 years. One of the recipes has to do with my wife. You know, Jason and his son. You know, putting a recipe in. You know, the recipes are super personal and super emotional, and hopefully ridiculous, delicious.
So I guess in my head I was thinking that the stories would be connected, and that actually brings me to a question I thought of while you were talking, which is if Chuck, you have a story in this book, and let's just say your artist is Tim Seeley, and your colorist is Brian Wolf, and the letterist is Jerome. Did you give each creator in that line a chance to put in a recipe and a story to go, like a couple paragraph story to go with it?
Yes, we did.
So the way you guys set the book up really provided a way for everybody involved.
Yeah,
to
now I'm not going to
participate in the
say
recipe
everybody
section.
did, but
they had a chance
but a
Yeah.
shit ton of them
Yeah.
did. And so you've
Yeah.
got letterer recipes, you've got colorist recipes, you got writer, you got penciler, inker. You know, we got Phil Hester and Andy Parks back together for this one. Thank God. We have to thank Austin Hamlin, our one of our creating organizers. We should also throw a shout out to Carmelo Chimera, legal counsel and co-creator. He's amazing. He got Dan Doherty together. But yeah, we have. It's not just pencilers and writers, man. It's colorists and letterers, and it's everybody. These stories are these recipes are coming from everywhere. We've got Steve Niles. I still can't pronounce the name of his recipe. Can you do it, Jason? Beef board.
I think it's mise en place.
No, his story is mise en place, but his recipe is beef bourguignon. It's a French recipe. I don't know, but I can't wait to cook it.
Beef
Is it
bourguignon?
beef
Ask him someday because we're now buddies with Steve Niles. We'll just ask him. So I'm so sorry. I know I'm not your buddy. We're just acquaintances. I just had to say that out loud one time.
If it's what I'm looking at right now as I googled it, I think it's bourguignon. Bourguignon.
Bourguignon.
Yeah, that's a very French name.
Yeah, whatever it is, I can't wait to cook it because I tell you, one of the things I'm going to do when this book comes out is I'm going to cook every recipe. I'm going to cook one recipe a week for a little over a year. I'm going to do it.
So we can expect a YouTube channel as Chuck makes the recipes from Pots and Panels?
We can expect maybe a Pots and Panels podcast finally. Can you figure that out, Chris? Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Little secret, it's easier than you think. No, so you must have gotten a ton of recipes, like a ton of different kinds of recipes. Like, did you get any that you were just like? Did you get any recipes that you sat there and like, really that like, your recipe is pepperoni pizza, but then the story behind it just moved you to the point where you're like, fuck Travis, you can put pepperoni pizza in the book.
Jason, would you agree that yes?
Yeah, because I think it was really more about. It wasn't necessarily about the recipe itself. It was just about what
The story. Yeah.
Yeah, the story behind it.
I'm going to pull up a couple of the recipes if it's okay with you.
And I swear to God, if Jerome's is poutine, Swear.
Let's look up and see if Jerome. I don't know if Jerome did it, but let's look up Jerome's recipe live. I don't know if he did or
Just
not.
play right in the stereotype, Jerome. If you sent poutine in, I swear to God.
Let's check it out and see if he. Let's see. Some of the creators have not turned in their recipes yet, and shame on you if that's you. And let's call out Jerome Gagnon right now and see if he did it. Let's see if he did it yet. What team is he in?
He's on a few of them.
Yeah, but no, I'm talking about his main team. Travis, that's right.
Yeah, it's Travis's team.
No, he doesn't have a recipe in, but should we talk about Travis's recipe? Let's go, Travis Gibb.
I'll name some creators,
All right.
and you let me know if you can tell the recipe. Let's start with Travis. Yeah, let's.
All right,
give
let's
Travis
look up Gibb. What team number is that? Do you remember, Jason? Team 36. In your recipe. Come on.
Oh,
Boo. Travis, turn in your recipe.
come on, Gibb. Okay, let's try this again. What was Richard Fairgray's recipe?
Richard Fairgray's recipe. Let's go.
I know what it is. I just don't know if he turned.
He turned it in.
He did.
Here it is. Fairgray recipe. Sour gummy spray. This recipe. As an adult, I have the freedom to eat as much candy as I like and stay up all night, but that doesn't stop the judgmental looks. I developed a food to give me great sour flavors while looking like a responsible adult. So he has half a pound of gummy candy. Sour or plain, flavor is up to you. 6 tablespoons of tartaric acid. Put gummies in Ziploc bag and seal it. Place the bag in a bowl of hot water for 5 minutes to soften. Pour the tartaric acid powder into the bag and reseal. Massage the powder around the gummies so they're coated evenly. Leave 3 to 5 days. After a while, the acid will dissolve or partially dissolve the gummy candy. Pour this liquid into the empty breath freshener spray bottles. Any solid gummy that remains will be sour as fuck and very enjoyable at-home snack. The liquid can be whipped out at the fanciest of adult events, and people will thank you are just staying fresh. There you go.
That's
go.
exactly what I thought his response would be. Something crazy like that.
There you go. There is a pots and panels recipe.
Let's try one more.
All right.
And we'll see if we can get
an actual food.
I just had to know what Richard Fairgray's was. What did Pete Rossetti give you, or Rosette give you?
I know that off the top of my head. It's hot chicken salad.
Ooh.
Look up the recipe. It's him and his daughter Emily, who is also a pots and panels house colorist. So the dish name is hot chicken salad roll. You need a casserole dish, a baking tray, a chopping knife, cutting knife, mixing spoon, 3 cups of boneless, skinless chicken, 2 to 3 cups of rice when cooked, half a cup of mayonnaise, 10-ounce can of cream of soup, can be cream of celery, chicken, mushroom, your choice, 2 to 3 stalks of celery, 1 cup cereal, corn flakes or honey bunches of oats work great, diced water chestnuts, optional, some butter melted or use spray butter, and your favorite seasoning. Celery salt is very good. Bake the chicken according to instructions, then cube it. Chop the celery into small pieces. Make enough rice for 2 to 3 cups. Mix the chicken, rice, celery, mayonnaise, soup, and water chestnuts together in a 2-quart casserole dish. Season to taste. Crush the cereal and spread over the top of the casserole. Spritz the top with butter to brown in the oven. Cook at 350 for 30 minutes. Broil the last 5 minutes to brown the top further. And here's their story. Salad has been a staple dish in my family going back at least 3 generations. My grandmother on my mom's side used to make it when we came over for a dinner not involving holidays, and it would show up on our dinner table once a month while I was growing up. Shortly after I got married, my wife asked my mother if there was any favorite dishes she should know about, and my mother simply handed her an index card with the hot chicken recipe on it. My mother had made 2 copies of the recipe, one for my brother, one for me. when we were still young, for when we inevitably moved out. She knew, and she was right. I can't explain the phenomenon that happens in our household on hot chicken salad night. It's just one of those dishes that you keep coming back to get more, like it will cease to exist in the near future. You keep eating and eating. Nothing exists until it's gone. My 5-foot nothing 100-pound artist daughter will eat her weight in it in one sitting if you let her. Good for 4 generations. Perhaps we should make a copy.
That's awesome.
Right? That's you picked that at random, Chris. That's what this book is.
Yeah, I love, like I said, from the moment I heard the idea, I loved it. I love cooking. Like, I'm someone that has cooked for a long time, ever since I got a job as a cook and had to figure it out on the fly. As a man that just reached has officially entered the threshold of his late 30s, I'm entering the smoking phase of my life. So I'll be smoking meats left and right. Cooking's a big part of my life as well. So just any excuse to... I've got more cookbooks than I can even think to look at. And I will just sit down and read them sometimes just to get ideas and figure out new things. I'm always trying to cook something new. So I just love it all around. It's one of those things. Like, it makes so much sense. We need to do more in comics to say a comic book can be anything.
It can.
And why not a book about food?
Why not?
Why not a book about cooking?
Why not?
And I think you have a slam dunk idea here. So
thank you.
I really hope this is successful for you, because I would love to see a volume 2 and who you could get for that. I think, honestly, Chuck, the podcast idea is genius to go along with it. I think you have something you can do many times over for a long time with this book.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
So
I have to tell you, I appreciate you. If we're going to throw out some accolades, I appreciate what you do for independent comics. I appreciate what you do. You've been a stalwart supporter, and man, I appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And as I was thinking about it, I'm just going to give I don't have the recipe on hand, but it would be my mother's chicken noodle soup.
Let me throw this out to you. We have a few spots open, and I told this, you are supporting Pots and Panels right now. Jason, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Submit a recipe. You want to be in it?
I could possibly do that.
Send it over.
We will. I will send you a link to the recipe template.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're in Pots and Panels.
It would either be that or be my mother's meatloaf. But either way, they're
Figure
simple
it
ones,
out.
but they go back.
Yeah.
I'll give the quick version, but it just goes back to coming home, everybody's around the table. And that was a rare instance in a family where both my parents worked full-time. My mother worked 60 hours a week.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Just having everybody around, to this day, just having everybody around the table.
So, Chris, you're getting a link to the recipe template tonight, and you have a couple of days. Put it together and write your story and make it Peter level, right? Pete Rice-It level. And I know you will. And you're in Pots and Panels. All right, you support.
So everybody out there has that to look forward to too.
Yeah, there you go, man. You're in it, Chris. I appreciate the fuck out of you, and let's get you in the book.
That's awesome, man. So, guys, real quick before we sign off, where's the best place to send everybody to follow you? I'm sure you both are on Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it, Facebook, whatever social media you want to pimp out there.
For me, it's usually mostly just Twitter. You can find me there.
You can find me on Twitter at ComicsChuck, COMICS Chuck. Jason and my website is Defective Comics, COMIX.com. Defective, not detective. And then at both of those places, you can find a link to the Kickstarter pre-launch page. This Kickstarter is launching full on October 8th. And Chris, you're in it now.
So everybody out there watching and or listening, remember to check out the show notes down below, because I'll have links for you to the Kickstarter page where you can go and follow it. Or if you're listening to this after October 8th, you can go pledge to the campaign.
Yes.
And also the Pots and Panels website, so you can check out all the cool stuff they got, all the creators they got on there. Basically, the resource I was using to pick names is if I knew them off the top of my head while we were talking.
Yeah, that's potsandpanels.com. Literally spelled out, potsandpanels.com.
Yeah.
Easy.
So check out those show notes, click on those links, and check out the campaign because it looks really cool. And we didn't even get into the fact that I love the cover. It's this 50 Styles cover that's going to suck you all in right away.
Shane Swank, he's a fine artist. He's only done one cover in comics, and it's a Popeye cover for IDW. And that if you check out Shane Swank Popeye cover on eBay, it will cost you over $200 to get a copy of it.
So, Jason, Chuck, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to me tonight and chat about some cool recipes and a cool comic. And I just wish you the best of luck with this campaign.
Thanks, brother. Get your
Thanks,
recipe
Chris.
in. I'm sending you the link as soon as this is over.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.